coming 2 years. And that will give us indication of how in the future projects where the plants are taken and saved for until they are replanted, what would be optimal conditions to storage different type of plants. Next. So you can see, no, go back please. You can see here that we were able to move trees which were over 7 meters. And in here is the pine, and but very well we have been able to, or which have survived, have been oak trees, which was a big positive surprise. But here you can see that how roughly we have to remove these trees, because they were living in the forestry area. And obviously we didn't have opportunity to trim root systems or anything. So we were just lifting the trees and the plants with their root balls, what we were able to get. And it was done by using machinery, tree by tree or plant by plant. Next. And here you can see that what we did last summer, we have so-called field works. So when we were moving the ground planting under the trees, our top of the rockery area, we knew where they were removed, and we wanted to see that how this removing after when there have been one winter on that Nurmijärvi condition already, we wanted to see how these plants have adapted, or which plants have not survived or have survived. So we have this research, international research method where we were looking the coverage of each of the plant species. So we will know that how these all conditions which I mentioned earlier on will affect. And we are actually this summer, we are doing this again in all of these our plants, all of our ground plants and all of our trees. Before they will be this autumn, we are bringing the plants out, the first set of the plants back to Vuosaari. Next. And in here you can see just the species and roughly the size. They are not, we will measure them properly this summer, but so we didn't have actually we didn't have a, I would say, good tool to measure all the trees. So they are approximate heights for the trees, but this gives you indication what species we have there. Next. And in here you can see that when we are transforming all this research knowledge, what we have gathered to a presentable form, what it will show, and it will show that all the different species, how they have taken this move after the first winter and the first summer. And really we have all these different type of points what we were researching at the grid of the stem, and we have numbers of the quality of the tree or the plants and so on. So we will know better in the future which would be the best species. I'm not going into detail of which have survived, but overall we can say that the conifers, the bigger conifers, they have harder to adapt this move than the deciduous trees. So that is something what was interesting to find. But then there were always those surprises, like I was showing earlier on the pictures, that the big pine trees looked very healthy. So there is not 100% confirmed information what we can say, what is the best species or best conditions at the moment. Next. And then you can...
Tanya, I will ask you slowly to wrap up as we run out of time.
Yeah, but the previous speaker was late, so I'm speeding up as well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's taken in account. Yes.
Yeah. And in here you can see that we are observing the light conditions for how they have affected species. Next. And really, could you go back, please? Because it really affects how I'm trying to, then really we are trying in traffic, because what we are going to do, we are publishing research articles, which are then the tool what we can use for future projects. Next. And in here you can see the connection of the different type of research questions what we have been able to do. Next. And that was like before the early spring and later spring. And like what I'm hearing here saying is that there is not really 100% answer what we can do and what we can say and what we can recommend, but hopefully after in coming years we would be able to recommend more what species, what size and which condition they are moved. But what we have found out that bare-rooted trees seems to do better than these root ball, and we don't know why. We can't understand why, because if you go and buy a tree from the nursery, it is different. It survived the root balls, but the bigger root ball, it will survive better than the bare-rooted. But we are not able to answer yet that question. Next. And in here you can see our research team, which is working even weekends. There is my professor and my fellow researchers and some students. Next. And of course, not only that we are researching the plants or growing mediums, we are researching the people who have been working in this project. So the city planners, building companies, our clients, the people who have hands-on with removing the plants and who will be replacing the plants and recreating this. So landscape companies as well, and the people who will building the or will use these rocks and tree stumps to make, for example, children's playground equipment. Next. And obviously it's based on the research and questionnaires, and of this knowledge we are going to write a research article as well, which we can then share for the future city planners and architects and designers. Next, please. And here's some of the rough images, how it looked in last autumn, and it doesn't look green at all. But you can imagine that when we are all these height differences, which make this planning of these houses very challenging. But so I hope that in the future years I would be able to send you the pictures where you can see how this greenery has changed this area. Next. And we are researching not only those what I mentioned, trees and so on, but we are researching how the biosolar roofs will work in Finnish conditions. And this is the first time ever that in Finland has been accepted that we will have meadow planting on those together with biosolar roofs. So we will see which species would be the best suitable to link, and all these questions with the fire hazards and safety and all those are linked to that as well. And this is the once again other research article which are going to publish. Next. And this was my last PowerPoint slide, and I would like to thank you, and it was really speed up because of limited time, but I hope you got the idea that what we are creating here and what unique opportunity I have had, and linking this to research is something what is only way to forward so that we can argue against all of the questions of saying that it's not possible to do that kind of design. It is, but it just takes a lot of time and effort and willpower. Thank you.
It's so impressive to see your ecological ambition be tested against reality. And I can imagine when you face that not everything works, not every species survive. It's quite a journey. I'm curious how you got such a client who was willing to follow your ambition.
Yeah, that's a good question. It is based on my previous building project in Jätkäsaari. And there was a building company with whom I work and apply a building plot, and it was very successful, and it got different awards, international and here in Finland as well. And then, but it didn't really satisfy me, my ambition, or I saw that we can do better. We can have an even more challenging project linked to research and building. And I have to give a big thank you, not for only the building company, but Helsinki city planners and our clients who were willing to see this type of research, because really linking this type of research on buildings, it's never have happened in Finland before, and for my knowledge and our research fellow knowledge, not in anywhere else either, that what we are doing. But it has been taking a lot of meetings, a lot of coffee, and a lot of research, that we are talking about facts, and we are accepting that what we are doing isn't something what is norm, but hopefully it will change of whole business world, how it's linked to building houses and designing cities as well, supporting biodiversity, supporting wellness of well-being of the people who live on those houses in the future, and just changing of how we think that how buildings can be done.
Thank you. Yes, I think when the building will be finished, I think you will prove a lot of assumptions wrong that was previously for our understanding. Yes, the time is up. Maybe if someone really wants to have some question, now is the time, or we move forward. Okay. Tanya, I will ask, can you please stop sharing? So the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so check.
I quickly check the check. Okay. Okay, so let's go forward then, and we move back. Yes.
We have two questions.
We have two. Apologies.
Encourage owners developers to involve research in buildings. Just read it.
So there was a question from Ivars Verzic. Thank you. Tanya, very good approach to design housing development. What encourage owners, developers to involve research and to choose green way of building, also to create and use green roofs? Is it benefit from municipality, self-owners, intelligence, or seeing value in this?
Thank you for the question. I don't think that there is only one reason why they wanted to be involved. I think it was that they saw that this is something what have to be done to change the future city planning and how the housing is done. I think they wanted to be part of this type of project because they wanted to show that just, I don't know if this is a diplomatic way of saying, but they wanted to be like leaders in the field. They want to be linked to research as well, and they felt that even it's very challenging, but it's still possible. Obviously, we have, all of these specialists on the building side to link this as well. So all the engineers and all the, safety issues and how much soil we can have, that the structure of housing is okay under all of this planting. We have a big group of people, specialist people linked to this project, and even this is now my 10th year with this project. The past 2 years, the special designers have been linked to this project. So I just say that the people are very proud who are linked to this project, architects and building company and all of them, and our research team, that we are doing something different, that we have opportunity to do different. And we were granted by the government, so they are helping this subsidizing this housing project as well. So I think that was the big reason. It was possible to build something like that. We didn't have money to spend regardlessly, but we have to, because there are boundaries how much money you can spend per square meter for us, but we have managed to do that. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that answer. Okay, so let's move from ecological systems back to the city, to some special capacity within historic fabric. So, and our next speaker is Herman Zonderland. He's a chief urbanist for Amsterdam Historic Center with extensive experience in government-led spatial planning and public space strategies. Herman works within one of the Europeans' most sensitive heritage contexts. And he's unlocking this new housing capacity micro-densification inside the strict heritage limits. So Herman, please.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Let's see. So today I will present you the Opvallen project we did for the city center of Amsterdam. But before we dive into the projects, I want to show you some different scale of policies of the municipality. So I want to start with the comprehensive vision of Amsterdam for 2050, where we want to create a human metropolis. And this vision describes the desired development based on 5 strategic choices. The first one is a polycentric development, next growth within limits, also the sustainable and healthy mobility, and as vigorous greening, and as last the making the city together. To have a policy with a bit closer angle, we have the Amsterdam Development Strategy until 2035, which is also based on the growth within the limits, where we want to achieve a complete city with vibrant neighborhoods, which is an area-based approach. Which leads us to the city center approach, and this is a city borough program for the city center, based on with a focus on 6 themes, and I think for the projects we will talk about today, the strengthening of the cultural diversity and the neighborhood identities together with promoting a wider and more diverse housing supply are the most important ones. And creating new residential spaces is not something new we're doing in the city center. One of the things we have been doing since 1985 is the Housing Above Shops project. Within the city center, we've got a lot of vacant spaces about our shopping streets, about shops in the shopping streets. And in the last 40 years, we have been able to add 1,100 homes within the city center. And as today, we're still adding about 30 to 60 houses each year. And another way to look for possibilities within the city center was the Optoppen opportunity map we've made 2 years ago together with an urban design bureau called MUST. I think Optoppen is an adapted English word within English as well. It's about topping up extra layers on existing buildings. And we've looked for potential space within the Amsterdam city center based on 5 criteria. First one was the UNESCO status of a part of the city center. Just like Riga, we have a UNESCO city center. But it was also about the building evaluation system we have in Amsterdam, which describes the level of monumentality of buildings. I will skip to it quite quickly, but to show the potential we found is like we found more roofscapes available for topping up than we would have expected in a protected city center. And this map shows the different ownership of the buildings. So we both looked at buildings owned by the municipality as of social housing corporations and buildings which are privately owned. And altogether, we found about 35 times the footprint of our Amsterdam City Hall, which could be topped up. And if you translate that into numbers, it would be like 350,000 square meters, which could equal like 4,500 homes. This sounds a lot. It is a lot. And developing within the historic city center is difficult. So if we were only able to find 10% and add 450 homes, that would be like a big achievement already. And this all leads to this project we did with the guys of Loom, which is a practice for cultural transformation. And during the Optop study we've done with MUST, they came on the line and they talked with us about like, yeah, we're living in the city center, and we are really wondered by this one-story buildings within the historic center, and mainly in the Wallengebied. This is also a link to where the name Opwallen came from. So it's a join between Optoppen and Wallen, the area within the city, the area in the city center where we're talking about. And many of those buildings have been there for quite a while in this status. So for example, here, this is for the ones who know Amsterdam a little bit, quite famous restaurants on the Zeedijk. And those buildings of one story, they have not been there like forever. So these gaps were filled once back in the days. So that gives a special thing within the city center that we have still space within our zoning plans to develop, because there was a building, there's still the development right. So within the zoning plan, new buildings can be developed within these gaps. So together with Bloom, we looked at the area, and within really the old heart of the city, we already found like 26 of those spots where a one-story building has remained. And together with Loom, we did some first exercise on how you could develop those gaps, both in a permanent as in a temporary way, but really to find solutions, what to do with these gaps. We organized this design challenge. So in the summer of last year, we've asked about 24 emerging Amsterdam-based architecture practices to come with a plan how they want to approach this challenge. And together with a committee, we selected 4 teams to investigate and elaborate their ideas. It was a process of a few months where we also did some guiding and intervention sessions. So it was not that they were in their own bubble, but it was really about working together. And in the end, the goal was to create a starting point for property owners, residents, and other parties to how to shape the future of this neighborhood and to give inspiration and hope that it's still possible to develop within the city center. So now I want to describe the 4 projects which were the result of this this challenge. And the first one is the Better Living puzzle of Bureau Lada. And she was inspired by both the welfare state housing models as the contemporary forms of collective living. And the Better Living puzzle introduces a new transformative typology, which is a compact residential unit that directly open into shared semi-public spaces, or saloons, how she called it. And these units reinterpreted the traditional box bed into a contemporary living unit. So what she's done is she created like a building which has 2 parts. On one end, the private pods where people live, and in a way also just like these bigger collective spaces. And she based that on the home saloons, which were rooted in Renaissance Italy and France. Following this example, the saloons clusters combine various functions as gardens, cooking spaces, bath spas, recycling, textile recycling, and co-working. And every unit she looked at contains a puzzle of 5 of those saloons together with 10 units for living. And in this way, neighborhood residents, alliances, and co-housing residents can participate in those shared saloons. The proposal is a collection of developments, so it's not one development at its own, but together it forms a social ecological housing network, which is supported by policy, innovative financial models, and contemporary design. And the comfort and generosity they create are only achieved by solidarity. The second project is from HOA Architects, and it's called Behind Doors, Behind Windows. And the proposal of the architects is it does not only look back to the city past, but it consciously chooses the present and the current situation as a starting point for future development. And it embraces the everyday nature of the 26 locations. So the plan celebrates and preserves the monumentality of every day. And just like spaces make centers legible, the 26 gaps in the red light district give the streets and alleys their recognizability. On the right top, there's this famous painting of the Golden Band on the Herengracht, which shows the imperfections which literally and figuratively offer space for wonder and imagination. The proposal of the architects wanted to celebrate the monumentality of the emptiness. And it's a little bit like the concept of the Japanese concept of ma, where empty space is not only about absence of something, an object or a building, but rather about the presence of endless possibilities. So what they've done is they removed the one-layer building but kept the facade and put a new building a little bit more back on the plot. So there is a courtyard created as a buffer between the street and the new building. And as a layered interplay of the new facade, a glass skin curtains and the warm appearance of wood will change with the time of day and the residents' use. On the top floor of the transparent architecture, the characteristic pointed roof forms a communal garden, which is a green oasis with views over the red light district and is a softly lit beacon in the evening when the neighborhood truly comes alive. The third project is called Work in Progress by Studio Ana Torres and Studio Ventura. And this plan is more like a temporary intervention than compared to the other ones, a permanent intervention. And the project is an ambulance system full of life, a body that moves and walks from gap to gap, and it comes where it's needed and it moves when the work has done. The model serves as a case study both in its use and its architectural shape in order to give guidance to a future permanent infill. It's a humble infill of the gap. A metal scaffolding structure offers airs and design program in the current urban fabric. The drawing illustrates the marriage between the technical language of the scaffolding and the life within its grids. The system offers a menu of possible configurations and cocoons that can facilitate programs like public bathrooms, pocket gardens, elder community spaces, and temporary daycare. It's a stack of softness and life, and work in progress reveals itself within the strength of the scaffolding structure. Kind and flowy materials are varying transparency levels added as a soft language and identify the infill. The volume responds to the details with context, and the program is an answer on the neighborhood needs. And the last project was done by Studio Art Hoxbergen and it's called Relight Districts. And where the studio doesn't see the 26 locations as a flaw, but it sees it as a city breathing space. With small strategic interventions, they add lights, air, and life. And just as monasteries once provided care and community, the new places they create once again anchors of urban care. So the studio created a toolkit consisted of a modular timber construction. It's prefabricated elements which can be installed in a weekend, so it doesn't cause any construction disruption. Wood as the primary material connects tradition with innovation. It references to Amsterdam historic timber frame construction, but in a contemporary CLT way. The woodwork workshops will become the breathing hearts where residents, craftspeople, and designers prepare the modules together. Here, all production methods are revived in a new form. The architecture extrudes transparency. Semi-permeable facades, voids, and skylights bring air into the dark alleys. Flexible volumes grow within the neighborhood, from micro-apartments to community rooms. This creates a network that strengthens the community and gives residents breathing space throughout all phases, from design to use. And as we wanted to share these possibilities and broad look on how you could develop within the Wallen area we hold this pop-up exhibition. It was the second week of December last year. And in this space in the city center, we showed all 4 designs and the study we've done before. And a weekend long, we talked with architects, residents, owners on how you could develop those plots within the city center. It was short, but people were enthusiastic and quite a lot of people showed up during the whole weekend. And to give legacy to the study we did, we created this booklet about the project. So if you want to learn more, I can share the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code. It's bilingual, so it's both in Dutch and in English. So you can, so it's available for everybody. And then I think I've saved 3 minutes to get back on schedule.
Evan, that's impressive. I really appreciate that. And yeah, this really reframes the capacity of the city. This presentation, like we see, cities are not full; they're just layered of things. And I think with this project, you, as you said, you respect the emptiness. You manage to have this vision of densifying, and at the same time to do just enough to respect the silhouette of the city, or how we see it, that it actually stays quite empty. And maybe that could be the first question from my side. What do you think is kind of the most, how to say it, what would be the strategies to add capacity without damaging identity? So one would, as we see, the strategy that pushing back and being a little bit invisible. And did you encounter other strategies doing that?
Oh, I'm sure. I think all of the projects show that they all have their own beauty in itself. So the project of HOH architects, where they pushed back the building a little bit to create this little courtyard in front of the building, they also said, like, if you push it a little back, you can build a little bit higher as well, because then you preserve the existing side lines and the existing sunlight on the street. I think it's all tailor fit every project you do in a historic center, and you have to be aware on how you deal with it. So these 4 studies were just like ideas to show the potential, and that the city is like a sponge which can adapt more than you would accept. So in the end, I think it's just like having a study on each location where you do an intervention and pay respect to the surroundings, but don't be afraid to add a new contemporary layer to the old city. So I think every generation has a right to add their own layer to a city, and I think there's still space to develop in historic centers.
Right, thank you. So, anybody has additional questions?
No.
Okay. So,
So Herman, thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask the practical question: how do you think this project can influence the real transformation in the old city, so in the historical city?
So on one hand, it's, I think, about showing potential to building owners and developers in the city. Some of those plots are just like inherited by families and they have the space and never thought on that there is a development possible. I think many people think like the inner city of Amsterdam is locked and nothing is possible. So in one way, it's really like giving a message as a municipality like that things are possible. On the other hand, what we see as well within the city center, that if there's a development, most of the time it's based on traditional historic architecture. So this is also an invite to to put modern architecture in the historic center as well. As the beauty committee of Amsterdam say, like, okay, we encourage architects to come with contemporary designs, but making a contemporary design within this historic context is more difficult than basically copy an historic building. So we need good architects to make beautiful things.
Great. Check quickly comments. Okay, great. So let's move. Yeah, Herman, thank you. So let's move.
You're welcome.
From more historic center to large-scale infrastructure lands. And our final speaker is Maarten van Ecke, professor of urban design, University in Antwerp, Belgium. And he is expert in sustainable urban infrastructures. And his work examines how railway-owned land can move from being urban barriers to becoming catalysts for housing, public space, and long-term value creation. So he's bringing us to infrastructure-defined future inhabitation capacities. And just a quick comment from our Latvian. For us, this is a really interesting topic because for us, railway zones are treated as well as untouchable, protected strips that actually separate neighborhoods, and they are safety barriers, not and becoming urban barriers as well. So we need not only to challenge our mindsets, but as well challenge planning regulations regarding this topic. So, floor is yours.
Thank you, Rini. It's very interesting. Maybe we can pick up that thought afterwards. Thank you for the introduction. And I recognize that being a last speaker, I know have the impossible task of being both insightful, but also trying to be shorter than everyone has been before me. I'll do my best. In the last 15 years, I've been studying the transformation of train station areas. And I'm sure most of you know these examples. A lot has been written about this transformation of those big train stations, which all brought in these star architects, especially early 2000s when Europe came with a lot of funding for the transformation of the high-speed railway network. But most of our train stations in Europe still look like this. We have a platform, we have a kind of billboard which shows when hopefully the train might arrive, but that's about it. Not only in Belgium the situation is like this. This is another example from the Netherlands. I hope Herman doesn't blame me for showing this, but at least here there's some canopy to take shelter for the rain. But that's what most of our train stations in Europe still look like. I've been comparing best practices all over Europe, and what I see is that there's like 5 big challenges each of these communities, cities are struggling with, or 5 challenges you might say, which return each time when you're designing a train station area. And I hope these 5 points can help you either as an architect designing the new master plan, or either being part of the administration, public authorities, and putting out a tender design competition out there. First of all, which is always the driver in those competitions of transformation is the traffic. Either it's a traffic jam or there's the demand of increasing the capacity of the railway. Unfortunately, I have to say that here in Flanders, we're the European champion in traffic jams, with Brussels and Antwerp being the 1 and 2 most congested cities in Europe. On an average day, we stand 8 hours in traffic jam, queuing back and forth. The advantage is that, of course, because of these huge traffic jams, is that the railway transportation is getting more and more popular. Also, in these smaller train stations, people acknowledge that it's easier to drive 5 or 10 minutes with their car to a smaller train station and then take the train for another 15 minutes to bigger cities like Antwerp or Brussels.
Martin,
but unfortunately,
apologies to stop you. Can you maybe put it on full screen, because you're stuck on a first slide? I have a feeling you're jumping through the slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it now moving or not?
Now we see the parking gap. Maybe we go quickly from the start. It's moving as well. Yeah.
It's moving. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, this is the way how we accommodate those cars. Very dull-like, concealed parking spaces. Dangerous to get out of the train at night. And I think we can do better. And companies have been doing like this. But these are huge, vast areas of parking lots. Here you can see a small train station of Aarschot. In the plan, this is only the train station building, and the huge surface car parks are taking up right now. To be honest, the last cars, they're next to the cows into the agricultural field as we speak. We can do better, and architects have been drawing nicer plans. This is, for example, a proposal in Aarschot, where a parking becomes also a kind of park, connecting a river together with a city park, and functioning at the same time as a kind of buffer of development of a more larger industrial park. In Hasselt, the West 8 landscape designer company has been putting the car park underground, at least 2 stories. The last story is above ground, and a kind of, how should I say it, green carpet has been rolled over it. So you have a small park buffering between the hustling and bustling of everyday life in the train station and a more residential area on the other side. In Strasbourg, they moved out the buses and the parking lot, I should say, farther away from the train station, and connecting the parking lot with a kind of light rail to the train station. Design is by Zaha Hadid. One of the first transformations we had here in Belgium was the Leuven train station. As you can see, the public space was occupied fully by cars, designed by the famous Manuel de Silla Morales. And nowadays we can rest and sit on the terraces, enjoy the sun and the beer, instead of looking at those cars. The trick he pulled was by conducting the cars underground, keeping the parking lots underground, so all the through traffic has gone. And the parking lot is not a typical kind of gloomy type of space where you don't want to leave your car, especially not at night. No, it's a kind of double height parking lot, as you can see, even entering daylight from the side. It was a project nice for its days, but it's already 20 years ago it was done. And today we know more about the challenges, especially on the topic of climate change. So again, the square is under transformation, bringing back greenery and more room for water as well. Besides cars, another challenge is how to host public transportation. The buses. It's not only a place where you can get on and off the trains, it's also to make a multimodal connection to the buses. Often the space is jammed with buses. It's often the first thing you see when you get out of the train station, or these big metal things with exhaust fumes. Not a nice thing, and often also causing incidents with people running to get their bus when their train was too late to drop them off. Cities are looking for other solutions, how to move the bus station to another space, to a less valuable space, cheaper space, and to give back the square to the people and to the public space, as they've been doing here in Hasselt. Something I often miss when I study master plan designs is space for adapted transportation. Think of school buses, car sharing systems, micro mobility. It's something designers often miss when they're redesigning the train station area. But those types of mobility also need space, of course. And the last technology we see more and more are those kind of self-driving vehicles. For the moment, they're still heavily funded by European subsidies, but we see them more and more. They tend to have a kind of trajectory of about 5 kilometers long, 5 to 10 stops, and they can host about 10 people at once. We have an experiment in Leuven as we speak. Another mode is, of course, the bicycle. This is unfortunately how we see a lot of train stations being cluttered, but all types of bicycles. Bicycles are becoming more and more an increasingly popular mode of transportation to reach for the train stations. But as soon as we tend to design, as we see here in St. Niklaas, a nicely designed space to park your bike, after 1 or 2 years, it proves to be too little, too late. A nice example is this one in Utrecht, Europe's largest bicycles. Over 12,000 bicycles are parked there, but it's a nice place, nicely architecturally designed, with the light coming in through those nice concrete columns, bikes being stacked on top of one another. But it's literally the red carpet which is rolled out for the cyclists. More smaller design, I have to be honest, this is not a train station, but a subway station in Copenhagen. If you look closely, you can see how the surface, the ground surface, declines with just a little bit more than 40 centimeters, but it's enough to delineate in a very nice way the parking for the bikes. And you also have a nice overview over those bikes. Over 2,000 bikes are stored like this. Bicycle hotel in Norway, functioning as a kind of modest landmark where you can go on top of the roof and where you have a nice overview over the train station area as well. And also, it's important to have there the right equipment to make reparations to your bike if necessary. Nice initiative here in the United States where with the QR code, you can also scan a manual where you can read how you can fix your bike if you don't know how to do it. More complex design, but it shows how those bicycles and those car parks can be integrated in one design, top. To use Hammond's words with office design here in Nantes, with a kind of mezzanine with an H-shaped racing track as it looks like, but it's an easy way to find the next open spot for your bike. And it gives directly connection to the train tracks as well. More modest design in Dendermonde, small landmark where the bicycle highway enters directly into the parking lot. And on the other side, the designers propose to develop a bicycle parking lot also as a community meeting space, so you can kick out the bikes and then have a nice party with your neighbors. And from there on, discover beautiful landscape in the surroundings. Last but not least, the pedestrians. You're always running for your train, so when you are in a hurry, it's important that you can run to the train tracks in a safe way. Here in Padua, they did a nice job in making it very clear where's the space for the cars, where's the space for the pedestrians. More large-scale example in Arnhem, designed by UN Studio. They wanted to connect all the different modes of transportation in a very fluent way. They used the analogy of the bottle of Klein, a kind of mathematical analogy of a never-ending surface. Once you're in the building, you've got a beautiful overview of where you need to go next, where are the train tracks, where are the taxi stops, and so on. But unfortunately, once you exit the building, then you're on this big barrier of a very busy street. So it's important that if you design the train station area, you don't stop just at merely the plot of the train station itself, but also make the connection to the surrounding neighborhoods. That's what they did very nicely in Le Mans in France, where the old 19th century building is complemented with a light, a thin glass, how should I say it, gallery, which not only helps you to wait for the new light rail, the bus gives a connection to the bicycles, but it also connects to a new conference hall on the one side and a hotel on the other side. Modest example, you don't need to be a big city to do a good design here in western part of Flanders, Poperinge, industrial small town, where they kicked out the buses to an eccentric place so they could give back the place to a kind of small town square, and they also accommodated the bicyclists under a nice shed-like canopy, which refers to the old industrial heritage of the community. Train tracks often cut straight through our cities. They are often a morphological, but as well a psychological, social barrier in our cities. When the train passes by, barriers go down, a city stops to continue. Even it just sometimes even cuts straight through city blocks, as you can see here. This is the engineering way of solving these problems. We build a tunnel, and I'm sure you all how it smells down there. Gloomy lightning, graffiti, and so on. So how can we overcome those barriers in a more efficient way? One, we can go over the train tracks. Nice design of West 8 in Aarschot, where the bridge not only hovers over the train tracks, it will also give you a quick access to the platforms itself, nicely integrated on the right side, and that kind of typically leftover space on the left side, they used it to integrate the bicycle storage under it. As you can see, nicely, it gives a facade to the square, but as you can see, there's still a huge job to do on the square itself. Small example, in Mikkeli in Finland, the train tracks cut off a nice part of the city from the lake. Also there they use the same technique of a kind of cantilever bridge giving direct access to the train tracks, but it also hosts a small courier office where you can give your packages and then the cycle courier goes away with it. Larger design, not only over the train tracks, also the highway designed by Kobe in a smaller train station in Copenhagen, which also protects you from the wind and the rain. And I really like the way how they use the wooden material, gives a cozy feeling to it. Another strategy is, of course, of going under the train tracks. Here you see a more landscape-ish type of design, where the topography is used to go under the train tracks, designed by Haptic. And they use the leftover space under the train tracks in a very intelligent way to put there the typical train ticket shops, food shops, restaurants, and so on. The strategy has been realized in Rietberg-Zeist, designed by Arcadis, where you can see how the landscape goes under it, and instead of a small tunnel of merely 2-3 meters here, you can have even a long perspective under the train tracks. On one side, the waiting room, on the other side, under the train tracks, efficiently made use of the space as a bicycle storage place. Third option is manipulating the train tracks themselves. You can either lower the train tracks as they proposed here in Turnhout, but I have to warn you, this is a very expensive solution. Train tracks tend to incline or decline only by 0.8%. It anyway, here in Valencia, they moved the train tracks underground, repurposed the old train station as a kind of community space. And they did a good job because even underground, you can still have the daylight coming in. Or you can move the train tracks above ground. Here, what they did in Copenhagen, design by Kobe and a more on the threshold with the harbor. Beautiful architectural design where you still have the long perspectives over the case. Third challenge is the program. As soon as we had the train tracks in Europe, first in the United Kingdom, then on the main land, as soon as we had a train station, economic development was pulled like a magnet towards the train station. We had the cafes, the hotels, restaurants, typically clustering around the train stations, but also larger industrial developments came along. The train stations were really an economic boost for that big industrial vague in Europe. And some countries, we still have some of that first 19th century heritage around our train stations, but in most of our cities, that's been redeveloped for a long time, since the 90s especially. In Flanders, it's still the policy that we want to stimulate that kind of economic development around those nodes, around those train station stops. And we did an evaluation of the development around 20 main train stations in Flanders during the last 20 years. And you can see that a lot has been developed. Those are the black kind of strips. The dotted strips is the public space, which has been redeveloped, and the red strips are the planned developments. So still is a lot of developments are going on, as you can see. A lot of opportunities to still develop around our train stations. Here you can see the red strips in plan, where the opportunities are nowadays. And I wish I could say how much you can develop around a train station. It differs from situation to situation, but there is a strong correlation between what we call on the left side the node value of a station. That's it's a value which tells how well the train station is positioned within the railway network system. And on the other hand, how much can be developed on the other axis. And if we plot all those different train stations, we did see this kind of curve where most of the train stations are situated. However, we can see that some train stations still have a huge potential in developing, and some train stations might have overdeveloped. In terms of types of programs we see around the cities, we see a large variety. Some have invested more in residential, or others more in public and offices, and some more in mixed development. We try to do a kind of prognosis of the possibilities of development using this butterfly diagram. It's based on a professor from the University of Amsterdam. On the left wing, we plot the type of connections we have in train station, and on the right side, we have the development potential and the cost of living in the butterfly wing. That's nice for theory, but this is unfortunately how practice looks like. Still, if we look around a lot of train stations, we see big developments. And real estate developers, they tend to be interested, especially in the upper floors, being housing, being shiny new offices. But unfortunately, this is how the ground floor often looks like. We, as urban planners, we often demand of those developers to have an active plinth, as we call it, to have some interaction, to have something going on, but often it's being built, but they still remain empty, or they have a function for 1 or 2 years, and then they go bankrupt and nothing happens again. And we end up with a kind of lifeless situation. The same situation in Sydney class, where a lot of offices flock together near to the train station, but they close at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and not happening there anymore on the square, leaving a very dull and even subjectively unsafe place. Some cities try to copy their big brothers and sisters, pull the same trick, build big shiny offices and apartments there, but it's especially hard in smaller cities, smaller communities. Still, we can have some much more interesting alternatives and types of program complementing the classic offices and housing. For example, we see some more industrial opportunities close to the train tracks. A lot of noise, hindrance, Those types of, for example, here these wood sheds, wood ateliers, they can help buffering also the noise hindrance. Nurseries. One of the things, if we want to make a sustainable modal shift, is to get people out of the car. And once people are in their car, for example, to drive their kid to school, they remain seated in their car, and they do also the trip to their work to their car. If we could get the people out of their car for that first trip, for example, to the nursery, well, they might tend to take the train also for the rest of the trajectory. Here, a nice example, in a very small train station in close to Antwerp, hosting a nursery. More exotic example in Buenos Aires, where the former reparation sheds of the train station were used to host a small school, creative workshops, and meeting places for the residents nearby. Doctors' offices, especially our larger cities, are struggling with having enough dentists, doctors, and so on. Here, a nice example in Switzerland of a former train station hosting a doctor's office. Train stations often situated in a very central location. Commercial activities, lots of examples there of pubs, cafes, hotels, taking a good advantage of repurposing all train stations. Also, the spaces under the train tracks, we have nice examples of those in Rotterdam, Tokyo. I'm sure many of you have did a romantic walk already on top of the Viaduc des Arts in Paris, having those nice art galleries under it. Zurich, also a nice example here, close to my home, the Centers in Borgerhout, where you have not only those workshops, but also a kind of community bicycle storage place. Or you can even have full-fledged markets under the train tracks, like here in Berlin, or the beautiful Chelsea market in New York. Art academies, cultural centers, music schools, perfect programs to have them in those former train station buildings. Here a nice example in Lokeren, done by Plus Office architects. Also, the youngster, those are often overlooked, hard to design for in urban planning, but those leftover spaces left and right of the train tracks are a perfect space to host, for example, a skate park here in Lokeren. Or why not have a wellness in a train station? This train station was demolished after a tsunami, redesigned by no one less than Shigeru Ban, where you can wait on your train and even take a bath when the delay is getting too long. Clubs, those train space under the train tracks are acoustically perfect bunkers to have the biggest noise, to have great parties like they do in Berlin and in Vienna, London, the Beer Mile, or here close to my home, the Ampere Club in Antwerp. Room to meet the community, the refurbishment of a small train station close to Brussels, done by B Architecten, where a glass facade also functions as an acoustic buffer. Community space, it was a kind of leftover reparation hall of the old locomotives, which was given for a year for free to the local community in Leuven. Well, they're there already for 5 years due to the huge success and popularity of these kind of meeting places, small vegetable workshop places close to Leuven station. Last mile logistics spread over Europe. We see also transformation of trains, train wagons hosting these kind of small kind of distribution systems for last mile logistics. Unfortunately, here in Belgium, we don't have that system yet, but I think it opens a lot of possibilities. And last but not least, affordable housing. What if you could host people where it's a sustainable way to live close to the train tracks, so people don't need 2 cars per household anymore, which is average here in Flanders. Can't we use this kind of community, a kind of public owned land, often to build affordable housing? Here are two nice examples, one in Switzerland, one here in Brussels. Here a combination of affordable housing and services. Besides the apartments, there's also a party room for the youngsters, underground parking lot, and a server room, and a small school as well, all combined on a brownfield next to the train station of Sint-Truiden. We did a small calculation. We looked at all the developable plots on, let's say, 10-minute walk around the train stations in the center of Flanders. We looked at all the zoning regulations. We subtracted all the floodable areas. We subtracted all the European protected nature reserves. And we discovered that 1/3 of the entire housing need of Flanders, we can host them on a 10-minute foot walk in the vicinity of our train station. So I'm sure that's not only the case in Flanders, and there's a huge potential of our train stations to consider them as a perfect spot to develop affordable housing. Public space. As soon as the train station arrived in Europe, we had a second main public space next to the Grand Place. We had the train station square in front of the train station. And often in between those two big public spaces, we had the station street, as we call it. Unfortunately, we often also have a backside of the train tracks. You have a good side and a bad side. A public side where the square is and a backside. More and more communities are trying also to upgrade that backside. Here, design of Turnhout, where new elderly housing are framing a nice little square. Train station tracks are latent ecological connections because people aren't coming there. They're the perfect place to fix ecological continuities, maybe even host a regional biking track as they did here in Tiene. Often rewarded design in the Park Bellevue in Leuven, where the residents close to the train tracks got some extra garden, and a new garden wall protects them also from the noise hindrance, and they get an extra access to a bicycle highway leading directly to the city and the rest of the region. Small landmark in Herstal, designed by multiple architects, where you can wait for the train, have a nice overview over the square and the rest of the community, nicely integrated in the topography as well. And finally, the building itself, at least, that is, if there's a building, if there's a train station building. In Europe, we tend to have two generations of train station buildings. The first generation, the 19th century stations, they had a kind of grandeur. They kind of reflected the optimism, the belief that the train tracks would bring prosperity, a new future. And then we have a second generation of train stations, especially after the Second World War, from the 70s, 60s, where architecture was more focused on, how should I say it politely, and on a more functional way of hosting passengers, getting them to the tracks as soon as possibly. So my question to you is, what is the third generation of train station is looking like? Especially in those small communities, we don't have the star architects, we don't have the money of them to host them. Maybe fortunate, we don't have it. But there we see that the investments are much more spread over the entire area and not only invested in one single architectural totem. For example, here, small train station in a smaller city in Germany, where a canopy is full of voltaic cells, which fuels the lighting of the platforms. One of my favorites, smaller train station in Zurich, Hardbruck, designed by EM2N. Very complex situation. You have train tracks, you have a boulevard entering the city, a bus platform. Not a building is being designed. No, a kind of big canopy, but there on a big screen, the logo of the train station, and that's it. people can there wait for their buses to come, and then in respect for the disabled people, working with elevators, ramps, bringing them to the right place. And it really functions as a magnet and was a big instigator for the transformation of the neighborhood as well. Last design I'd like to show you is a small train station. It's a design. It's not realized yet. The design by Effect in Vimge, a small train station in Copenhagen, where they introduced a big green connection on both sides of the train tracks. And it's not one station. No, it's the kind of circle which hoovers over the train tracks, gives a connection not only to the train, but also to the buses. And the functions, the typically type of functions you expect in a train station area, they're hosted in the plinths of the 4 new buildings on each of on the side. So the typical newspaper restaurant there in a kind of mixed development on both sides of the train tracks. You can see how the functions are in the ground floor of those buildings and the big green space in between. So these are the 5 takeaways I'd like to give you. If you're redesigning a train station area, one, look not only at the train station and not only at the trains as a source of mobility, also the bikes, public transportation, shared mobility, pedestrians. Secondly, how can you overcome the morphological barrier of the big rail infrastructure? 3, what type of program does the neighborhood need next to the train station? 4, how can we develop the train station also as a place to meet, to have proper public space there? And last but not least, do we still need a train station building, or should we look at more in an integrated way and redesign the entire neighborhood instead of investing it only in one building? And I would be a bad professor if I wouldn't give you some homework or at least some literature. These are some of the articles I've published about these ideas the last years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, Martin, thank you. Such a well-covered topic. No, so what's clear now, we see that railway land is not an empty land. Now it's controlled, governed land, and it's kind of, when we think of these railway corridors, we are not only redesigning the space, but we are redistributing as well the power who holds these lands, and that's I think that's the big challenge. Definitely, we see that. From that, I have a question which you probably didn't touch or I didn't see. Like, for example, in Switzerland, it's SBB who's the operator and who's developing all of these areas, so that they can go quite extremely close to the tracks and everything. And then, in your experience, who ultimately controls transformation in these railway territories? Is it the operator, municipality, or even a capital? What's your experience with this?
Exactly. Today, I only talked about the spatial aspect of train station. The process aspect, that's another lecture I'm giving. No, it doesn't get any complexer than a train station area, especially here in Belgium, in Flanders. The train station itself, it's owned by the national company. The train track is owned by another national company. The bicycle highways, they're governed by the province. The public domain next to it, it's owned by the local community. If there's a big road, that's often governed by the region of Flanders. So you have at least 4 different levels who need to talk to one another if you want to redevelop a train station area. So it's important that you have one, how should I say it, one project leader who takes the lead in the redevelopment, at least of the master plan. And in my experience, it can be hosted on different levels. It could be hosted by the provincial level or the local level. I've seen successes of the project leaders on different sites, but it's important that there's one. In the past, unfortunately, we had plans being developed either by the national railway company and at the same time by the local community. And so at some point they had two master plans and there was nobody to decide. In the Netherlands, for example, they have a spoorbouwmeester, kind of government architect who's responsible for the redevelopment of the train stations. Here in Flanders, we have the government architect. Those kind of neutral institutes, they could help to be kind of broker, should I say, to mediate between all those levels of governance. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Helena, yeah?
Okay, thank you, Martin. Yeah, it was really impressive. And if we outline this story towards our situation, then we get the picture black and white. So yeah, that is very, very contrast situation. And my question also concerns the process. Yeah, because typology, it's very diverse. Yeah, but I think that we have seen also in other countries. But the process in Netherlands, in UK, and in Sweden, the railways are also doing very good, but Belgium, to me, is exceptional. So I see I have seen the last maybe 15 years, a huge number, and you see in the urban tissue systematic approach. That is not just one city, something decided, but you see this systematic approach. And the examples are just excellent. What you have shown, this Livin station, okay, it's not so green, but it still works, just amazing. And it is a real example. You haven't spoken about Spoor North. Yeah, it is a very interesting project in Antwerp. And Antwerp is also the one of the leaders in Belgium. My question is, what do you think? Who have contributed to this? So that is long process. Who have contributed to this systematic approach? That is first. And why do you think we are so much behind it? So yeah, I don't ask how we can facilitate it, but it's a very complicated question. Yeah, but yeah.
Thank you for your question. Yeah. Well, the two examples you refer to, they're a result of what we call the open oproep. If I would translate, it's the open call. It's a new instrument which was launched here in Belgium now almost 20 years ago. Some of the architects, some of the cities, they were fed up that local communities, real estate developers, they were always working with the same architects and not guaranteeing quality. So Flanders started to work with a Vlaams bouwmeester, a Flemish government architect. The first one was Bob van Reet, and he launched a new type of competition, which has been copied in the Netherlands and in France even as we speak. And it's a kind of competition which is open to everybody. You don't need to have a portfolio where you already built 5 city halls the last 5 years of over 20 million euros of budget. No, it's open also to younger offices, and it's also open to European offices. So it opened up the market, it professionalized the competition culture, and it really boosted the quality of architecture. So 2 times a year, there's that open call. Cities communities, administrations can hand in their portfolio, architects can apply, and then the team of the Flemish architect filters out 10 offices and then sits together with the local community to get out of their 5 teams. And those teams are being paid. And that's another thing. Unfortunately, we had a lot in Flanders. A lot of competitions were organized, but they weren't paid. So now at least also smaller offices, they can participate and without going bankrupt. So that was a huge boost. Also for the train station facilities, because then you had a kind of neutral party coming in. Because before that, you had the national railway company, which is big, which is out there in Brussels, and often a smaller community, which doesn't have hundreds, dozens of experts, engineers working for them. So there was also a lack of capacity building. So the Institute of the Flemish Government Architect came in not only as a kind of mediator, but also brought in the expertise, because in those competitions, they also hire each time a kind of external expert. And I've served many times for the Flemish government, where I kind of support the local community in those transformation processes. So it's a matter of governance and capacity building.
Sorry, in one room. Who paid this? So the first, thank you for stressing the role of Vlaamse Bouwmeester, the Flemish architect, because in Riga, we 2 years ago we closed the city architect agency. And I hope that our politicians will recognize the necessity to have it and will bring it back. Yeah, but another one, who is paying for this participants of competitions? That is railway station company or
it's
municipality?
both. So in a typically competition for a train station, it's both the train station company, national level, and also the local community who pitches in. The team of the Flemish architect, like the hourly wages, that's paid by the Flemish government. It's a kind of service being rendered. And I have to be honest, it's not a privilege of big cities of having the nicest examples, at least not here in Flanders. Also small towns, Liedekerk of all places, small community in the middle of Flanders who did a really nice job. It doesn't have to do with any type of political party neither. I've seen examples spread over all political parties, but it starts with a political local will also of doing something about it. So it's a combination of budgets. It's an expensive project, but if you can spread it over the national railway company, the local community, sometimes also the province pitches in to have a bicycle highway, for example, or to have a kind of buffer place for water. That's also another type of funding where you sometimes can get in European funding as well. So it's often, in my experience, a combination of different posts to have sufficient funding. And the advantage is if everybody contributes, then everybody feels responsible as well. And you get a more positive mindset in those processes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think that is maybe the answer for what we need to do. But I understood that the professional community was very active in this process, initiating the professional community, the planners and architects. Right?
Yes, they were. It wasn't only the Flemish architect. There was a huge will from the professional community to have that institute, and then later on to have it also on the city level. I'm sorry to hear that you lost your city architect. Some of our city architects, they have been under a lot of pressure as well. when we had different political communities. But each time what saved us were the nice project they managed to realize. And we got to the press and we said, look at all those nice projects which now define the image of the city. If you drop your city architect, if you drop your Flemish architect, we won't have that kind of brand, which is Belgium for the moment, being good in having a nice balance between new architecture and heritage. You lose that image, and that saved us each time again. Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. So we reached the end of today's webinar, and it was quite a perspectives and scales we looked on, and we know what connects all of it is that housing is not a standalone object. It sits in this intersection between design, policy, environment, economy, and mobility. And the real innovation we discussed today is not a single model. It's a coordination across all of these scales you covered today. It's kind of from building to block to city to territories, as Martin you covered. So how the big question, how do we increase the capacity while strengthen quality of life? So we try to answer it today, and we will continue trying to answer in a conference on 1st of April. So
Matt wants to say something?
Sorry, I didn't saw it. Yes, jump in. You're mute.
I was just going to make a comment on Martin's presentation, but I might have missed my.
No, it did. Now you need to do it.
Well, just briefly, I thought that was really very interesting, and for me, so thank you for that. And in the UK, I was thinking around the work that we're doing here, and it doesn't often involve new railway stations or things like that, but a lot of the points that you're making are very relevant. Firstly, we are, through the government and through developing new communities to try and hit these housing numbers and densification and quality and what have you, which often do include, these might be new settlements. We're looking at new towns, which would include train stations, but where we have sort of 5,000 or 10,000 new homes, there is often there's one project we're looking at in Shropshire, for example, which has a very light rail system. And even though it's not a train station as such, a lot of the principles of the mix of uses and community facilities clustered around those transit hubs are very relevant. Or even just the idea of an enhanced bus stop or bus station and a mobility hub. So a lot of the principles would relate the same. I think that's new settlements. Also for existing settlements and regeneration initiatives, there has been some interesting work which you're probably aware of in some of the London boroughs by groups like HTA Design, who've looked at, if you took, for example, within half a mile of a underground station, where you have a sort of interwar suburb, how could you increase density in different ways around there? And the numbers of new homes that are created is massive. So perhaps including some of those principles and the mix of community uses and what have you, and even, going back to the comments around Amsterdam and intensification in historic areas, that might relate. And interesting also, I think that government policy here now is changing so that new development around an existing train station or subway or underground station will almost get automatic planning permission, so will be fast-tracked. So you have that densification and diversification of mix of uses around not just railway stations, but also subway stations, underground stations, bus stations, and what have you. So I'm taking a lot of relevance from what you're saying. So thank you.
Thank you. I did the same with your colleagues. I've invited one of your colleagues from Transport for London a couple of years ago to my university, and we're very jealous about your modal shift, 90 to 10%. I mean, we're not close there ever. Also, the way Transport for London is doing real estate development themselves, that's a very interesting model. So transit-oriented development really gets a really different meaning that way. So no, I'm looking close at your developments as well. Thank you.
Good. So thank you to all speakers for their insights and generosity. Thank you for organizers and to bringing all this together. And thank you for joining us today. And I really hope to see you all on April 1st, the conference.
No.
Yes.
So from our side and from the side for the speakers, I hope we thank you, Renis, for nice moderation. And thank you, Matt, for being co-moderator, actually. So, the message for the participants, so we will share the recording of this webinar and also the presentation with you, and also with all speakers. We will combine it and we'll share it with everybody. So another message for the speakers, but I will write it once more in our common chat, that you, after each conference, we are doing issuing publication, in our journal Admarts, and you are invited to submit your paper there. So we will contact you regarding these papers. FA is responsible. We are, and I hope that not only these materials, but also the articles will be in our journals, in our journal. Thank you so much. It was a great day, and we had around 100 more participants going in and out. Today is the work day, but I think it was very fruitful and very interesting day, and it will continue in the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.